Welcome everybody from beautiful downtown Bangkok. As you can see in the window here, we're located right next to the U.S. Ambassador's residence and the Embassy for the Netherlands. And good afternoon to everybody from the UK. Before we get started, we want to cover a couple of administrative things. We're going to handle Q&A at the end of the webinar. It's always been a great part of the presentation, so feel free to ask whatever you like. There's an icon down below that says Q&A. Click on that, type in your question. We'll be happy to host or get to as many of those as we can. And if we miss anything, we'll do an FAQ later when we share the recording, which is our second point. If you feel like we're going a little quickly or you miss something, we will post the recording on our YouTube channel and also on our website. So don't feel the need to try to keep up with copious notes here. And then finally, for those of you who are live with us today, we're going to provide a bonus for your participation as a thanks for tuning in this evening. So without further ado, let's jump into the presentation. I'm Mark Friedman. I'm the Managing Director of Bantai. I'm an American lawyer and a member of the California Bar since 1987. I was also a former British Petroleum Senior Counsel and developed a definite affinity for London, which became my second home when BP was located at Finsbury Circus. Noina unfortunately can't join us tonight, my partner, who has been helping Thai nationals immigrate and visit abroad for many years. She's a bit under the weather. There's a cold going around here. But I'm pleased to be joined by our UK and Australia visa specialist, Will.
Hi, good evening to those who are currently in Thailand, and good afternoon to those who are in the UK. So my name is Wilbert. You can call me Will, and I'm the Client Services Manager for Bansa Immigration Solutions. I'm also the paralegal expert for UK and EU immigration services, and I have been helping clients all over the world for the past 6 years.
So just as an overview, we're going to be covering 3 different visa types. If you want to visit or bring a visitor or friend to the UK, we're going to talk about the fiancé visa and then finally the spouse visa. But before we jump into the substance of each of those visas, Will, I think it'd be important for folks to get an overview of process, expense, and timing. So why don't we start with step number 1? How does somebody begin to help somebody either visit or immigrate to the UK?
Of course. So I will be gladly to explain to you the end-to-end process of the visa application process of the United Kingdom. So the very first process, it's an online application. So meaning documents, forms have to be filled out online. So that's the first stage of the process. Then after which, once you have filled out everything, the fees have to be paid also online using your credit card. It's either debit or a credit card. And then after the visa fees have been paid, it will now go to VFS services.
And what does VFS stand for?
All right, so VFS stands for Visa Facilitation Services. So this is a third-party service provider commissioned by the Home Office to administer the application process. And let me just also emphasize that VFS doesn't have to say anything about the application. They will only administer the acceptance of documents and biometrics.
So the Home Office in the UK then has outsourced sort of the facilitation of this to a private third party. Where is that third party located? VFS doesn't roll off the tongue here in Bangkok.
All right, so VFS is currently located at Bangkok in Sukhumvit Soi 13.
Okay, so right in central Bangkok, probably a short walk from the Nana BTS station.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So you've put in your online application, you've paid your fees. Do you have to visit the VFS or is that also online?
That is correct. So you would have to visit VFS for the purpose of the biometric submission because Home Office will not start or commence the review of your application unless otherwise they have received the applicant's biometric.
And that's fingerprints and what else?
And photograph.
And a photograph. Very good. So they're identifying the applicant to the application in person.
That's exactly correct.
Do you need to make an appointment or can you walk in?
An appointment has to be made before you go to the VFS services.
Excellent. All right. So now you've got everything, including your biometrics, done. What happens next?
Okay, so what happens next would be Home Office will review the application based on the documents submitted, and then you just have to wait for a couple of weeks before we get a decision on the applicant's application.
Okay. And where is the home office officer based? Is that here in Bangkok or is that in the UK?
In the UK.
Okay. And then you're going to hear, and we're going to get into a little more of timing in just a moment, but how is the decision of the home office communicated to the applicant?
All right, so the communication will be made by an email. So this email address that was used during the application. So it's either the applicant's email address or their lawyers or their paralegals or their agents.
Great. Okay. So that's the general bones of the process. Now let's get into a little more specifics on the fees and the timeline, just to get people a sense of how much and when. So we'll start with the visitor visa. I see there's a range there. Why is there a range from 115 pounds to 963 pounds?
All right, because for a visit visa, the fee typically starts 115 pounds because that's for a shorter duration of 6 months. So if you want to have a longer visa duration, that's the time that the visa fee increases as well.
Okay, so the longer the visa term, up to 10 years, the more expensive it'll be
Exactly, and that's a 963 pounds fee for a 10 years
for a
visa.
10-year visa. Okay,
Yes.
which is similar to the US B1, B2, which also has a term of 10 years. And the fiance visa and spouse visa both cost the same. It's pretty pricey. How often does the UK increase these fees?
It's not often. As a matter of fact, for the past years, they haven't increased except for the for last October, where they made some announcement because they have to increase the fees in support of the home office services.
Inflation has hit everywhere, right?
Yes, exactly.
And we'll talk a little bit about timing. So for visitor visa, 3 weeks, but I also see you've noted here that you could get it back sooner for priority and super priority. Is that more expensive?
Yes, that's correct. So the good thing about UK visa assessment, they have an option for you to have an expedited service as opposed to other countries such as US and Australia.
Right.
Yes. So as for example, if you would like to offer a priority service, let's say for 5 working days, you can get the decision as early as that, but you would have to pay approximately around 21,000 baht. And for super priority, it's around 40,000 baht. You can get the decision as fast as 24 hours after the applicant submits the biometric at the VFS.
So several £100s to get the process moving along.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And then for fiance visa and spousal visas, 8 to 12 weeks to get a decision?
Yes, 3 months. However, if you would like to have it expedited also for a certain fee, that's for around 6 weeks or 30 working days.
And for you folks from the UK, just to put this in a little bit of context, as a US lawyer, it's taking between 14 and 18 months to get a decision on fiance or spousal visas. So, boy, really a
Yeah.
quick system here. That's great. All right. Well, let's get into kind of the specifics here on each of these visas. And Will, why don't you start with the visitor visa?
Yeah, okay. So if you're seeking a visa that permits you to visit the UK for a short-term stay of up to 6 months to bring your friends, partner, or family members for tourism, holidays, or vacation, then this visa will the type of visa that you have to apply.
And like the US visitor visa, there's no working, correct?
Yes, no working at all.
All right. And not even babysitting or any kind of
Yes,
domestic services.
that's
work. Just
correct.
be careful about that, folks.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of this visa.
So on the downside, obtaining this type of visa can be challenging as applicant must overcome the assessing officer's presumption that they may work or overstay in the UK. So similar to other visa to other countries, we have to provide compelling reason why we will go back to our home country. And in addition to that, you can't switch to a family visa in the UK.
So if you bring a significant other, girlfriend or
Mhm.
boyfriend, to the UK and you decide to get married, they're going to have to come out first and apply for the visa and then go back into the UK.
That's correct.
Okay.
But the good thing about this visa, as opposed to other countries, you can choose which as to how long the visa validity that you would like to apply for. So the standard one is 6 months, but you could apply for 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years, the maximum.
Great. Okay. So let's do a little bit deeper dive into this presumption that the applicant intends to violate the terms of their visa.
Mhm.
And by the way, this is not unique to the UK. The US has the same presumption. And what we say is you're essentially guilty until proven innocent. But there are ways to overcome the presumption. And the one way is to build trust with the officer reviewing the application. And the other way is to tell a story of the compelling reasons you have to return to Thailand. In terms of building trust, if you could show a history of honoring travel visas over some period of time, that really helps. And for example, we had a client who successfully obtained a tourist visa who had traveled on various visa terms to Japan 9 times. That gave the reviewing officer confidence that this person understood what the visa strictures were and could honor those. And then in terms of a compelling reason to return, that should ladder to the timing of your visit to the UK. For
Mhm.
example, you've got a good job here, you happen to be off for Songkran for a couple of weeks, and that's the period of time that you're attending, or you have a child and that child has a school break at a particular time. You're going to be there for the school break, and then you've got to get that child back into school here in Thailand. So it's really about making sure you present the headlines in your application in a compelling way and make sure it all ties together to give the officer confidence that you are going to honor the terms of that visa. It's not easy, but it's doable.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So let's move on. You're on the next stage of the relationship. You're not just friends anymore. You've decided to get married. Talk a little bit about the requirements for the fiance visa.
All right. So the next visa category is the UK Fiancée visa. So if you're planning to move to the UK to start a new life with your partner who lives there, you may qualify for the UK Fiancée visa. So this visa, the visa holder is allowed to enter the UK to marry or enter in a civil partnership with their partner who's based in the UK and start a new life together. The applicant partner must be either a UK citizen or have a permanent residency status. And also, the fiancé visa is valid for 6 months and are granted with the expectation that you will marry your partner within the visa validity period of 6 months. Otherwise, you would have to leave the United Kingdom. And also, the visa considerations will be the how legitimate your relationship with your partner. That's the most important thing. And also the income threshold. So your partner and you must meet the income threshold of 29,000 pounds annually. And
Okay.
lastly, you would also need to pass the English exam. As opposed to the US, there's none, and also the tuberculosis test as well.
All right, let's talk a little bit about this English exam. And you're right, there isn't for permanent residency in the United States. So would you have to be completely fluent in English, or what's the standard, would you say?
It's more on conversational English language.
So basic conversation.
Yes, that's correct.
And are there resources, if I'm a Thai national residing here in Krung Thep, is there some school or some resources so I can prepare for this English exam?
Yes, there are. So you can either watch sample videos on YouTube, or some testing centers are offering courses for a fee for you to be trained on how to answer questions during your English exam.
And these are testing centers that are based in Bangkok?
Yes,
Excellent.
that's correct.
Okay. Let's go on to the next one. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of the fiancé visa?
All right. So the advantage of having a fiancé visa, so it's easier to obtain than a visitor visa because the onus is on the applicant sponsor and how he can prove that he has the capacity to support you once you live in the UK.
And there's no presumption that the applicant is intending to violate the visa.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes. And
great.
also, the good thing about this visa is you can switch to a family visa. So once you get married, no need to go back to your home country. You can do the application within the United Kingdom.
So no reason to buy an expensive plane ticket and leave.
I couldn't
Great.
agree more. Yes.
And then what are the downsides for this visa?
It's more on scrutiny on the relationship. So you have to make sure that you have collated all the evidences before the visa submission and everything is documented.
Okay.
And
And what kind of documents are you looking at that point?
so normally it's the proof of relationship that you have met in person. So pictures and then like boarding passes that you went to Thailand or elsewhere that you met before.
So it's a record of your relationship, the things you've done together, your communications, celebrating events, that sort of thing.
That's correct. Yes.
And you raised this point of meeting in person. Is that necessary to do given all the online dating apps and ability to communicate online and electronically? Is it necessary to meet in person to apply for this?
Yes, it is necessary.
All right. How many times?
There's no such number of requirements as to how many times you met. As long as you have met in person, then that's good to go.
So one time is the threshold.
Yes,
That's
that's
engagement.
correct.
And what about you've applied for the fiance visa, you've gone to the UK. If you decide to get married in the UK, do you have to reapply at that point?
Yes. So if in the US they call it adjustment of status, so for the UK it's also switching to a spouse visa application. So you would have to do the entire process again, and you
Okay.
would have to pay another fee to change your fiancé visa to a spouse visa.
Which is just north, as I recall, of 1,800 pounds.
That's
British
correct.
pounds.
Yes.
That's an expensive switch. So if you're in a serious relationship, you may want to think about just jumping into a spouse visa to avoid that double fee payment. So let's talk about the spouse visa.
All right. So for UK spouse visa, this particular visa, partner visa, also known as UK spouse visa, it's a settlement visa that allows you to live together with your British partner in the UK for up to 30 months. And this is classified as a family visa category. So you can be either a couple or unmarried couples, whether it's homosexuals or heterosexuals.
Okay, so same-sex marriages or same-sex common law marriages are recognized in the UK as they are in the US.
Yes, they are.
Very good. And then when you talk about certain unmarried couples, what does that relationship look like under which you can then apply for this visa?
All right. So the qualification for that is you have to be in a relationship with your British partner for at least 2 years before the visa submission date.
Excellent. So it's 2 years of documented being together in a relationship. And again, the documentation is going to be very important there. For example, sharing bank accounts, sharing a lease of a property, that sort of thing.
Yes, that's correct, Mark.
Great. Okay. And then what are the requirements?
All right. So it's actually similar requirements to the UK fiancé visa. It just so happened that the spouse visa, you are already married before you submit the application.
Great. And can you marry here in Thailand?
Yes, you can.
All right. So, and that would require folks a real marriage in that it has to be registered with an ampua, a district office. Sometimes there's religious ceremonies here, but you do have to formalize that union. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And could you get married anywhere in the world?
Yes.
Okay. So a Thai national and a British national can go off and go to the Maldives and have a registered marriage there, and that would work.
Yes, it will work.
Not that I'm promoting tourism in the Maldives. Okay. So let's talk about the pros and the cons of this visa.
All right. So the advantage of this visa, it's a one-time application as opposed to UK fiancé visa. And once you have receive your UK spouse visa, you will receive a BRP card that would allow you to work like a British citizen.
That's important.
Yes.
That's excellent. And what's the downside as you come in as a spouse of a UK, either permanent resident or citizen?
The downside is that you cannot claim most of the benefits, such as public funds, housing allowance, or tax credits, as what a British citizen is experiencing.
So I come in as a spouse of a UK citizen.
Mhm.
How long until I can achieve essentially permanent residency? I forget the name of the term there in the UK.
Okay, that's actually a very good question, Mark. So if you are on a family route visa, okay, for 5 consecutive years, you can apply for indefinite leave to remain status, or which in a layman's term, it's permanent resident.
ILR.
Yes, or ILR status.
Okay. And then how long do you have to hold ILR status as a permanent resident before you become a citizen of the UK and get that British passport?
All right, so that's a very good question. So if you're married to a British citizen, you can simply apply for a British citizenship right after you receive your indefinite leave to remain status.
Okay. And for folks that are Thai nationals, having that British passport allows you to travel globally a lot more easily than on a Thai passport. And that's what I found with my spouse when she completed her journey to US citizenship and got that passport.
That's correct.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about the income requirement. As I recall, you were saying it's the same for the fiance visa and for the spousal visa. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mark.
Okay. So 29,000 pounds, not insubstantial. In the US, you can also use assets like a home or other kinds of assets in lieu of the income requirement. Can you do that in the UK?
No, actually, there are only five income permitted resources that the applicant and the spouse can use. So these are income from your employment. It's either salaried or non-salaried, and non-employment income such as property income from your rental, dividends or shares from your company. We can also use that.
Passive income.
Yes,
Okay.
passive income, and then cash savings, and then also your pension income, whether it's in the UK or from other countries.
All right.
And also income from your self-employment as a director of your own company can also be accounted as part of your income.
Great. And in the US, if you don't meet the income requirement, you can have a co-sponsor who agrees to be legally bound to help support the applicant. It's typically a parent or a sibling. Is that available to you in the UK?
No, it's not. Co-sponsoring is not allowed in the United Kingdom.
But the final bullet point you're noting here is that that 29,000 pounds is regardless of the size of the family, right?
That's correct. As opposed to the previous immigration rule that you have to prove additional income for additional child or children that you will be part of the application. But right now, they fixed it at 29,000 pounds, regardless of the number of applicants.
And that was a recent law change,
Yes, effective April 11, 2024.
which is different than the US, which requires additional proof of funds for each additional family member. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Will. I now kind of know how to bring a friend, a fiance, or spouse. Let's talk a little bit strategically, folks, as you are thinking about perhaps taking advantage of one of these visa programs. For the visitor visa, many Thai nationals don't have a lot of international travel experience, or they may be building up their career and so on. So if you can think about maybe creating a record of traveling abroad before you make your application to the US or to the UK, that may build credibility with the officer, and also making sure that you can create, or not create, but have compelling reasons to return, and really think about the timing of your ask in terms of your visit to the UK and why then you need to come back. And then for relationships, if a relationship is brand new and you don't know where it's going, documenting the relationship may not be top of mind. But once you're in a committed relationship, I think it's really important to start keeping good records. That could be travel that you're doing together in terms of your airline tickets and your hotel stays, photographs. It could be greeting cards that you send one another, and certainly text messages and other ways that you're communicating with one another electronically, and phone records, frankly.
That's
phone
correct.
bills. And by keeping all of that, when you're ready then to file for your fiance or your spousal visa, all of that's together. And instead of trying to put together that record, you're really culling or choosing from that record. And it's much easier to file that application.
Yeah, that's correct, Mark. And in addition to that, that's why it is actually recommended that you seek legal advice either from a licensed lawyer, paralegal or authorized representative or agents, because these are experienced agents and have seen hundreds of applications in the past. And the job is, to find the error in your application. So it's either you do it nice or you do it twice. It's like paying fees multiple times just for you to get the visa.
So it may be cost effective to hire somebody, or if you've got a friend that has successfully gone through, just have somebody with experienced eyes look at your application before you spend that 1,800 pounds and maybe commit an error and have to do it again.
Exactly, Mark.
Okay, great. All right. Well, folks, that kind of concludes the substantive portion. We wanted to kind of give you an information download for about 30 minutes, and I think we hit that mark. There's two things I want to tell you. First of all, we will be, as I said before, presenting a recording of this so that if you want to look at a particular part again that you may have missed. But Will was kind enough to put together a UK visa guide. And you can go to our website to the resource section and download that for free. And a lot of the same information you'll find in that guide. The other thing is, if you've got a question that occurs later, and we're going to try to get to some questions now, you can always write to us at hello@btisolutions.co, not .com, .co, and ask for Will and present the question. And we're always happy to answer your questions or engage in a free consultation just to kind of get you, squared away. Okay.
That's correct.
So really appreciate your time. Appreciate it's getting to be dinner time here in the land of smiles, and it's the lunch hour in the UK. So we do appreciate your time. And as a thank you, for those participating today, if you engage Will and our firm within the next month, we'd be happy to pass along a 10% discount on our professional fees, just as an appreciation, a note of appreciation. Okay, so let's get to the Q&A, and we have a few of them, Will, to answer here.
Okay.
So the first question, and I'm an older guy, so I'm going to have to pop up my glasses here. But this first question was, I met a woman in Thailand and I'm considering marriage. Would it be better to marry her in the UK, in Thailand, or should I have her visit the UK first if she'd like to live here?
Okay, thank you for that question, Mark. So, if you are not after the cost, then you can have the fiancé visa and get married in the UK and switch visa. However, because of the cultural differences, so we are suggesting our clients first to invite them for a visitor visa. Have a look if UK is the perfect culture for them. And once they said, I love the UK," then they can come back to Thailand, get married, and apply for a spouse visa.
Good common sense. So we have a few more questions. This question is, what's the common denial reason in applying for UK visas? For example, for a visitor visa or for the settlement visas, fiancé or spouse visas. What are the common denial reasons?
All right. So for the common denial reasons for a visitor visa, it's about the consistency of the information that you provided. Because there are cases that, let's say, for example, if the applicant declared that they have met in person, but looking at the document, and then they're consistently communicating, but most of the time they fail to provide evidence that there's a ongoing communication. So that's one part of the denial. And also that you are putting a large amount of money prior to your visa application date. Because if the money that you put in the bank account doesn't commensurate with what you earned, so it's a doubtful reason from the home office as to the sources of your funds. So they are denying the visa for such money.
And by the way, that's like common reasons for visa denials, whether it's the UK, the US, or globally. It's really trusting the documentation, making sure it all hangs together. And I would say for visitor visas, the reason that most of those are denied is the belief by the officer that there isn't a compelling enough reason for that person to return. And again, you're overcoming a presumption that they're going to violate. So you really do have to have quite a good story to tell before that visa is granted. All right, we have another question. I've been with my girlfriend just over a year, and she has been to the UK for 6 weeks this year. What visa is the best to apply for her to come again, which can lead to an IDR?
Yeah, IDR, maybe she's referring to LDR. Thanks for that, Martin. So you have to marry your partner first before it goes to an LDR under family route visa. So either you ask him for to go there on a fiancé visa, or you go here to Thailand and get married and apply for a spouse visa.
And again, getting married here in Thailand requires formalization, typically a free to marry affidavit that is notarized by your British embassy here, and then translated, taken to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, legalized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then registered at the appropriate local MPA of your future spouse. That takes some time, and so it takes a little bit of planning to get that appointment at the embassy and so on. So just build that into your plan.
Okay, and another one. So, from Ben, should we go for spouse marriage or family visa? We have been married in the UK for over a year now. It depends. If the intention is to stay longer in the UK to get to be a British citizen in the future, then a family visa under spouse visa category will be recommended. However, if the intention is just to visit there from time to time, then a visitor family visa is the applicable visa for that.
Excellent. I have another question here. How long do I need to wait before I can resubmit my visitor visa application after it's been refused or denied?
Okay, so there's no grace period. As soon as you are ready to resubmit your application, anytime you can do it.
Okay, so that's the law, which says you can just keep resubmitting them. Our practical advice is you should wait until there's some change of circumstances that would say, hey, to the officer, I applied before, but look at this now through new eyes because I have an improved story to tell about why I'm going to comply with my
That's
visa.
correct. And I would like to emphasize, Mark, the difference between the other countries, when the home office denies the application, they will enumerate all the reasons of denial. And as long as you can answer those and provided the necessary documents, you can resubmit and the visa will be overturned. So I have several applications in the past that I was able to overturn the decision of the home office and they got the visa and the family got reunited.
That's outstanding. And by the way, it's much better in the UK than the US. The US will deny your visitor visa and never tell you a reason. In
Yes.
fact, people have called their US senators who have rung up the embassy on their behalf, and they won't even tell a US senator. So that's a very, very humane way.
Yeah.
We have a question here. My partner has been traveling with me to a few countries, including Australia. We are now back in Thailand with the fact, with the fact that she has an Australian current visa, make the process easier. We are planning our next trip to UK and then to Europe. Would the visa for the UK include the EU? So there's a couple of questions in there. One is, would her travel history and the fact that she has a visa to Australia help her?
The answer there is yes, as long as the terms and conditions of her Australian visa has been complied accordingly.
So if she can say, I was granted a visa for this purpose for this length of time, I complied with it, that builds trust.
Yes.
And the second question is, would the UK visitor visa include the EU, or are you going to have to apply for a separate Schengen?
It's a separate application.
Okay. And which is easier, as Oscar is thinking about, gaming this a little bit? Is it easier to obtain a Schengen? Again, I know it's country specific, or given this history, what we know now, should he take the chance and apply for the UK visa?
Well, the answer there, it really depends on the applicant's circumstance. So it's the
Okay.
overall circumstance that they're looking at whenever they grant the visa.
Okay. Martin's coming back to us. He thanked you for your answer. He's been advised that I can apply for a 2-year family visa, which can be extended until 5 years, at which time can take, I think there may be a typo here, but can take life in the UK test to obtain indefinite leave to remain.
That's correct. That's correct, Martin. So you have to, your wife has to be in the UK for 5 years before applying for indefinite leave to remain, and that has to take the exam for uh, life in the UK.
Okay, and that is a civics kind of exam?
Exactly.
Which is the same as the US
That's
when you
correct.
become a citizen in the US. And I assume there's resources to study for that test as well.
Yes, there are.
Excellent. Okay, I think, I think we have another question just came in. Sorry about that. If you got married, can your Thai wife come on a visitor visa or can it only be a marriage visa? Great question.
Yes, they can apply for a marriage visitor visa. I mean,
So-
sorry, can apply for a visitor visa while they are married.
But that same presumption that your wife will intend to violate the visa will still apply. So you're going to have to overcome that presumption.
That's correct.
Okay.
yes.
Whereas if you apply for a spousal visa, there is not that presumption. You just have to prove legitimacy of the relationship.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
But you can, yes, you can, Paul, apply for a visitor visa.
Yes, Martin, you don't need to be married as long as you can prove that you are that you are in a relationship for at least 2 years. Then you can apply for a partner visa.
Right. So that's that kind of what we would call in the U.S. a common law marriage or a common law relationship. And again, it's beyond just having a relationship. You have to be essentially cohabitating and be together.
Yes, it's a plus factor as well. Yes.
Got it. Okay. Martin, you've been terrific tonight. Thank you. Here's another question. How much money do I need in my bank account when applying for a visitor visa? Is there a benchmark there?
There's none. It's actually one of the myths that we have to debunk in the visa application process, because as what earlier informed that if you are putting funds in your bank account, that is not normal. That for example that they didn't see that in the past 6 months, and then lo and behold, like 2 days before the application, you got large sum amount of money. That's actually doubtful on the part of the visa assessing officer, not unless otherwise you could prove a document or attestation that this money was a gift from somebody else, or a money transfer receipt from a family member, something like that.
Okay. So in other words, what you're saying is if suddenly this Thai national shows up with a lot of money in their bank account a few weeks prior to the visa application, that's going to raise more red flags than be helpful.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
So again, planning ahead and being strategic about this will redound to your benefit in the long run.
That's correct.
Well, folks, we're 40 minutes in, which is kind of what our timeline was, to be respectful of your need to go get some dinner here in Krung Thep or go get some lunch there in the UK. I want to thank everybody. The interaction has been terrific with this group. Again, if you want to go ahead and look at resource guides for UK and other issues, you can go to our resources page on our website, and you can always send us a note. We'd be happy to hear from you. hello@btisolutions.co. Thanks again for your time. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to hosting another one of these webinars in the near future. Take care.
Thank you.
Khap kun khap.